السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد، يحيي ويميت، بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. وأشهد أن سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيبنا وقائدنا ومعلمنا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله، بلغ الرسالة ونصح الأمة وكشف الغمة، وتركنا على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. فصلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله، لقوله تعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. أما بعد، يا معشر الأحباب. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the utmost of praises. We seek His guidance, His assistance, His forgiveness. We seek refuge in Allah from the evil within ourselves and the evil of our actions. Whomsoever Allah guides, there is no one to lead astray, and whomsoever Allah misleads, there is no one to guide him. I bear witness, there is no one worthy of worship except Allah alone. And I bear witness that Muhammad is His servant and His messenger. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, upon his family, his companions, and all those who follow them until the last day. O you who believe, revere Allah as He should be revered. Be mindful of Allah and do not die except in a state of Islam. Beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, today I will be addressing a topic that, to my knowledge, has not been addressed on the mimbar within our community previously. And if it has, it is not often that this particular topic is spoken about. There has been a lot of attention focused on the atrocities that are happening and unfolding to our brothers and sisters overseas, and especially in Palestine and in Gaza. And we must continue to remember their plight, and we must continue to make dua for our brothers and sisters. But today, the topic that I want to address is something that it has a direct impact on our community. I want to bring things locally. And the reason why this topic is a difficult topic to speak about is because there's a lot of stigma surrounding it. Right now we're in the month of Sha'ban, and we're only a few weeks away from the blessed month of Ramadan. And we know that Ramadan is a time not only of increasing in good deeds and spiritual upliftment, but it's an especially important time for change. And this is related to the steps that we need to take in order to effect change within ourselves, within our families, and within our community. Because this is a topic that, again, it's not spoken about enough. The Muslim community is not immune to this issue. What is it that I'm referring to? When we talk about the aspects or the issues related to addictions and mental health. Brothers and sisters, this is a real issue within our community. It exists. We may know people who are affected or impacted by it. And my intention is, just as I spoke before on the issue of domestic violence, that I had a series of khutbahs on domestic violence. This is the first khutbah in a series of khutbahs to address in detail the aspects and issues related to addictions and mental health issues within our community, because we need to talk about it. There's no way around it, brothers and sisters. In order for us to be able to address these issues properly, we can't pretend that they don't exist within our community. We can't pretend that, well, this is a masjid. Why are you talking about these issues in the masjid or on the mimbar? Because the vast majority of Muslims in this community, they don't actually come to the masjid to hear this message. We have to take this message to them. We might have family members, friends, people that we know in our circles, that they might get a sense of, well, this is a trial, a tribulation, and I can't do anything about it. No, you can. You can do something about it, and you must. Because this is an issue that we need to address, because it has an effect directly on our families, on the well-being of individuals, of the well-being of families, and in the well-being of our community. Young and old, and especially a lot of our youth. I don't have to say this, but I do, in the sense of how much our youth are affected by it. It's something that many of us here know, that our young people are affected by this. So when we're talking about the issue of addictions, we need to speak about this issue as a community to better understand it, how it occurs, and most importantly, how to respond to it, to take steps as a community to prevent it from happening, and when it does happen, what are the steps to take in order to provide support to people who are affected and impacted by it. What are the resources that are available in our community that can provide support? Brothers and sisters, we must have a sense of hope as a community. We can tackle this issue. Just as we spoke about domestic violence, and we need to continue to speak about domestic violence because it's real, it exists, and we need to address it. This is another one of those very real, raw topics that we have to speak about and address as a community. And we can succeed in having a positive impact as we live up to following the Quran and Sunnah that are the primary sources of our faith. The first thing that we need to know and understand is that the occurrence of addictions, it is not linked to any particular faith. It is not linked to any particular ethnicity or race. It is a human problem, and it exists in all communities, including the Muslim community. Sometimes people, they think, and it's a misconception, that somehow we're immune from this. Oh, we know that alcohol is prohibited. We know that drugs are prohibited. We know that other things are prohibited. And we'll talk about the different forms of addictions. Do they really happen in our community? Yes, they do. Because Muslims are humans. It's not an excuse nor a justification, but it's just to be able to be aware of this reality. That it's not something that it only affects other communities, or that some people are more prone to it than others based on their faith, or based on their race, or based on their creed, or based on their ethnicity. No, it affects everyone. When we talk about these statistics related to addictions among Canadians in general, they will also apply to the Muslim community. In this series of khutbahs, I will be addressing two types of addictions in general. The first type of addiction we're talking about are those that are related to substance abuse. So whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, or other substances that people are addicted to, this is one form, one type of addiction. And there are different grades. Someone that is addicted to cigarette smoking is not the same as somebody who is addicted to alcohol in terms of the level and the severity and the impacts of those addictions. Or somebody that is addicted to hard forms of drugs. There are different grades or levels, but we'll be addressing them in general. So that's the first form of an addiction. But the second, and this is something that many people don't realize, but it exists, are behavioral addictions. People have addictions to gambling. Yes, within our community. People have addictions to pornography. Yes, in our community. People have addictions to other behaviors, such as, again, differences in levels of severity. People might have addictions in terms of social media or their phones, and it causes issues within the family. That's not the same level as an addiction that is like for pornography or gambling. But it's nonetheless an addiction. And so we need to be able to address it. Why? Is because these things cause mental health issues. A lot of times they go hand in hand, that there is a correlation between them. It's a factor that can increase the prevalence of mental health issues within people, within our community. And so that's why we need to address it. Some of the statistics to addictions in Canada, these statistics, although they're from 2016, we can imagine that these statistics will likely be more in our times. Approximately 21% of Canadians, we're talking about at least 6 million people, will meet the criterion for addiction sometime during their lifetime, in one form or another, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's behavioral. Based on that number, that means that around 375,000 Muslims in Canada are at risk for addictions that are related to mental health challenges. Over 2 million Canadians have reported problematic substance use over the past year. Over 2 million Canadians have reported problematic substance use over the past year. Young people, ages 15 to 24 are more likely to experience mental illness and or substance use disorders than any other age group. That's why we need to pay attention to this, because our youth are affected and impacted most by this. That's the highest demographic in terms of those who are impacted and affected, whether it's substance use or behavioral. Doesn't mean that the other age groups, they don't exist in terms of being affected or impacted by it. But they're the ones, the younger ones are at most risk, because we know what things are like in our society. These things exist in schools. These things exist on the streets. And we know, especially with the legalization of marijuana, that this is something, again, it can add to the effects and impacts and the risks for young people to become addicted to things like marijuana or weed. How does this apply to the Muslim community? Although more research needs to be done specifically about the Muslim community regarding the statistics and how much we're impacted by it, there has been some research that has been completed. There was a study that was done in 2019 by Sister Siham Al-Qasim, and she did a report entitled Gatekeeper Perspectives on Substance Use and Addiction Among a Muslim Community in Southwestern Ontario. And so she examines how various gatekeepers, meaning those that people reach out to when they're seeking support or help, it's about how various gatekeepers within the Muslim community were approached by individuals seeking support for their addiction issues. So whether they're faith leaders, whether they're police officers, whether they're teachers or social workers, were approached to address these issues, because people will come up to us and they'll say, I need support, I need help, I'm going through something. And so this is a study that looked into that, just to see what the role as well that our faith, Islam, plays as a preventative, as a factor for resiliency, a protective factor when it comes to drug and addiction and mental health related issues. This study also examined the role of the family and the community, as well as the issues encountered when seeking support for addiction. There are barriers in place. People don't reach out for help because nobody wants to talk about it, because it's stigmatized. Because, oh no, it doesn't exist. How could it exist in our community? Right? And if it does, then don't say anything about it. We don't want to air our dirty laundry. This is not about airing our dirty laundry. This is about addressing an issue that's real, and we need to be able to address it. Based on the practice of a local Muslim therapist here in Southwest Ontario, among the 150 clients who identified as Muslim, 1/3 of them approached the therapist seeking support on addiction issues. 1/3 from the 150. So we're talking about at least 50. This is one therapist, and this is their client roster. Of the 150 people, 1/3 approached this therapist for addiction issues, whether it was drugs, whether it was alcohol, or whether it was behavioral. There was a number of them that were also struggling with pornography. So how do we address it? We need to understand our role in putting a stop to this in our homes. And although it might be challenging for some who are actually experiencing this, we need to stand together as a community. We need to support one another to be able to impart positive changes within our lives, not put people to shame and to make them feel horrible because they have this bala, ibtila. It's an ibtila, it's a tribulation. And so the first step in this is to be able to speak about the issue and take an active role in reducing the stigma that surrounds addictions and its connection to mental health, so that concrete steps can be taken to support those who need it most. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us in the Quran? وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر ويقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة ويطيعون الله ورسوله أولئك سيرحمهم الله إن الله عزيز حكيم. This is the role of believers. The believers, both men and women, they are supporters of one another. They're guardians of one another. They encourage good. They forbid evil. They establish the salah. They pay the zakat. They obey Allah and His Messenger. It is they who will be shown Allah's mercy. Surely Allah is Almighty, wise. We need to be that support for one another. This doesn't mean that we say it's okay to do those actions. No, it's not to say that, oh, we're trying to make that which is haram halal. Absolutely not. But we can't ignore the issue. If somebody's struggling, then we need to be able to find ways to help them, to support them, to say, yes, there is a way out. There are means available that can provide help. And we take these asbab and we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we continue to strive to say, Ya Allah. But we can do this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُم مِّنْ خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. Any good that you put forward, if you become a means for helping, supporting somebody that has an addiction issue, to find their way out of it, to be able to get that support that they need, then this is something that will go towards your akhirah. This is a good deed. This is a great act of charity, of khair. It's not about bludgeoning people over the head with a hammer, saying, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And they were like, I can't help it. I can't help it. Because you don't understand the nature of addictions. And we'll talk about that in future khutbahs, inshallah. But whatever good you send forth for yourselves, you'll find its reward with Allah. Allah is all-seeing of what you do. These verses above that I just recited, they indicate the role that community members have in supporting one another to that which is best, that which will provide a person with a sense of safety, well-being in the dunya as well as in the akhirah. And they also indicate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only calls to that which provides benefit to individuals, ultimately leading to that state of success here in the short term as well as in the long term. When we look at the maqasid al-sharia, these are the 6 primary goals of sharia. That hifz al-deen is that the preservation of one's deen. Hifz al-nafs, the preservation of one's self. Hifz al-aql, the preservation of one's intellect. Hifz al-mal, the preservation of one's wealth. Hifz al-nasab, the preservation of one's lineage. And then hifz al-ird, one's honor and dignity. These are the maqasid al-sharia that the scholars mention. Everything in Islam will come fundamentally and ultimately to have these primary goals or aims. That's the goal, that's the aim. Of who? Of the human being. That it protects and preserves the human being in all these different aspects. Because it's for the sake of the preservation of people. It's about the safety and well-being of people on all levels, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, socially. All of these. And so Islam emphasizes the importance of preserving the dignity of oneself and of others, while prohibiting the violation of the rights of anyone, including the self. It also emphasizes the need to preserve our intellects, our aql, through which we come to recognize the great signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala around us within creation. Anything that leads to the clouding of judgment and acts as a barrier to see Allah's signs is prohibited in Islam. And so the rulings, this is where we get the rulings when it comes to substance abuse. But we can't just simply look only at the rulings and say that that should be sufficient. We have to look at the greater context to see how people are struggling and what we can do to help them get to a point where they're putting that into implementation. As a community, it is incumbent upon us to take the means to preserve our well-being, not only on an individual level, but on a communal one. And so we're responsible for offering whatever supports that are needed to help members overcome challenges related to addictions and mental health issues. It's not only for substance abuse addictions, but also for behavioral ones. And this can lead to the breakdown of the family unit. We know that. We've seen it before. people who have a gambling issue, people who have a pornography issue. It leads to the breakdown of the family. And I can't tell you the number of times that I've seen this. It's real and it happens. When we look at the hadith of our Prophet ﷺ, there are many ahadith that the Prophet ﷺ indicated how Muslims should be supportive towards one another. And these traditions form the basis of a Muslim's actions when considering stigmatized issues, things that people are afraid to speak about because they don't want to be brought to shame. It's not about that, but rather it provides encouragement and support for one another. One hadith that is Imam Muslim narrates عن سالم عن أبيه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال المسلم أخو المسلم لا يظلمه ولا يسلمه من كان في حاجة أخيه كان الله في حاجته ومن فرج عن مسلم كربة فرج الله عنه بها كربة من كرب يوم القيامة ومن ستر مسلما ستره الله يوم القيامة. That the Prophet ﷺ said on the authority of Salim, who reported on the authority of his father, that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, a Muslim is the brother of a fellow Muslim. He should neither commit oppression upon him nor ruin him. And he who meets the need of a brother, Allah will meet his needs. And he who relieved a Muslim from hardship, Allah would relieve him from the hardships to which we would be put on the day of judgment. And the one who does not expose the faults of a Muslim, Allah will conceal his faults on the day of judgment. It's not about exposing people. There's not about bringing out, people and pointing and say, oh, look at so-and-so, what they have done, and they have this problem. It's not about that. We abide by confidentiality. Those people who can help in this community, it's not about spreading the news of, oh, so-and-so, that they have this issue. Absolutely not. That's what sometimes prevents people from reaching out for help, is because they're afraid, oh, I'll become the talk of the town. That's an amana for us. We cannot expose people. It's impermissible. It's haram to expose the faults of people. And especially when it becomes a preventative for them reaching out for help and seeking support. We cannot allow that to be a reason for people not to reach out and get support when they need it. And the Prophet ﷺ also warned us about looking down at a fellow Muslim in a manner that is degrading. If somebody is struggling with an addiction issue, we help them deal with the issue. We help them deal with the action itself, rather than putting them down even further. The Prophet ﷺ said, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال حسب امرئ من الشر أن يحقر أخاه المسلم. This is a hadith that Ibn Majah narrates in his Sunnah, and it's a sahih hadith. Abu Hurairah narrated that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, it is sufficient evil, it's enough to be an evil for a person, a man, to look down upon his Muslim brother, to belittle his Muslim brother. That's enough of a shar. It's sufficient to be shar. That's defined as being evil. Just looking down at your Muslim brother in a manner that is degrading him. It can lead to actually a form of transgression against another individual. Because if we place judgments on people, not having full knowledge of their circumstances, not having full knowledge of their struggles, how often is it that people will make judgments about other people? Oh, it's because they do this. Oh, it's because they lack iman. Oh, it's because, right? And we don't know what they're going through. And you put people down and you make judgments about them. But we need to understand we have to deal with the actions. That's what we're concerned with. But maintain the humanity of the person that you're seeking to support and help. Maintain their humanity. Maintain their dignity. Allah knows what they're going through. That doesn't mean we're making excuses for them in terms of the wrong actions. It's not about that. But it's about recognizing we don't know people's circumstances, so don't judge. Don't place judgments on anyone. Allah Himself has forbidden us to transgress against others. And if we judge people that we have no right to judge, then this can be a form of transgression because it puts them down and it prevents them from seeking help. It closes that door for tawbah. It closes that door for seeking support because they feel, well, I'm doing something that is haram and there's no hope for me. Allah won't forgive me. My family is not supporting me. Supporting you in what? Supporting you in trying to get help, seek help. Not supporting you in continuing doing whatever it is that you're doing that needs to be addressed. عن أبي ذر عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فيما روى عن الله تبارك وتعالى أنه قال يا عبادي إني حرمت الظلم على نفسي وجعلته بينكم محرما فلا تظالموا. That Abu Dharr narrated, the Prophet ﷺ narrated, saying that Allah Himself said, O my servants, I have made oppression, dhulm, unlawful upon myself and have made it unlawful between you. So don't commit oppression between yourselves or against one another. That's a Sahih hadith that Imam Muslim narrates in his Sahih. So to conclude, there are 4 messages that I want you to take home today. First is the underlying basis for my actions towards others is one of concern, one of compassion, seeking to provide support to my fellow brothers and sisters. That's the first message. The second is we need to acknowledge the existence of addictions and mental health issues in our community, rather than denying it or acting as if they are not a problem. They exist, they're an issue, we need to address it. Number 3, think about yourself personally. Reflect. What is my personal perspective regarding addiction issues amongst Muslims? How informed am I regarding the occurrence of this in my community? What are the steps that I can take to help provide support? And the 4th is avoid making judgments when dealing with Muslims that have addictions or mental health issues, because this is going to help reduce the stigmatization of this issue within our community. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us and to help us understand the significance and the spread of this issue within our community so that we can take concrete steps to prevent it and to help those who are afflicted with it. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروا إنه الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك يا ربنا سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في ديننا ودنيانا وآخرتنا. اللهم استر عوراتنا وآمن روعاتنا. اللهم احفظنا من بين أيدينا ومن خلفنا وعن يمين أيماننا وعن شمائلنا ومن فوقنا ونعوذ بعظمتك أن نغتال من تحتنا. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك نستغيث ومن عذابك نستجير. أصلح لنا شأننا كله ولا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا ولا إلى أحد من خلقك طرفة عين. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم أذل الشرك والمشركين. اللهم انصر من نصر الدين. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين المظلومين في مشارق الأرض وفي مغاربها والطف بنا وبجميع المسلمين بلطفك فيما جرت بهم المقادير. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استووا استقيموا اعتدلوا سووا صفوفكم سدوا الخلل حاذوا بين المناكب والأقدام صلوا صلاة وديا يرحمكم الله. Straighten your rows, fill in the gaps. Please fill the left hand side of the musalla, the hall. Pray as if this is your final prayer. Allahu Akbar. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر إلا من تولى وكفر فيعذبه الله العذاب الأكبر إن إلينا إيابهم ثم إن علينا حسابهم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Inshallah, I've been asked to make dua for a couple of people. Brother Abdullah Abazi, who's the father of Burim, who is here and helps a lot in the center. He's actually ill with cancer in the hospital. And so we'll make dua for him, for Shifa. As well, there's Brother Bashir Ahmed Khan, who passed away 2 weeks ago. And so we'll make dua for him. اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين اللهم إله الناس أذهب البأس اشفي وأنت الشافي لا شافي إلا أنت شفاء لا يغادر سقما ولا ألما نسأل الله العظيم رب العرش العظيم أن يشفي أخونا عبد الله أبازي نسأل الله العظيم رب العرش العظيم أن يشفيه اللهم عافه في بدنه وعافه في جسده برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم ارحم موتانا وموتى المسلمين اللهم ارحم أخونا بشير أحمد خان اغفر له وارحمه وعافيه واعف عنه أكرم نزله وسع مدخله اللهم اغسله بالماء والثلج والبرد ونقه من الذنوب والخطايا كما ينقى الثوب الأبيض من الدنس وبعد بينه وبين خطايا كما بعدت بين المشرق والمغرب سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. One final announcement is this Sunday there's going to be a human chain for Palestine in terms of boycotting Israeli goods, and this is being organized by the CPCSA, and so this will take place on Sunday, February the 18th between 12 and 2 p.m. And the location will be at Costco on Wonderland North, and so that'll be this Sunday from 12 to 2 bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum. One last announcement is that we have representatives here from the Muslim Resource Center that have a table on your way out. If anyone would like to seek any sort of support related to mental health issues or anything related to our khutbah today, then you can get information from the table in terms of the services offered by the Muslim Resource Center.